strategic move that Eddie is making for AJ? Why are you not thinking, let's get him set up for
kind of animal? That was years and years and years ago. Like, Clarissa is a way different fighter from when she was back in the
Thanks to those joining me live and to those that will be joining me on our
defenses that she's had to have recently. You know, she's pulled people.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Roundtable about tribalism. I don't think tribalism is necessarily bad. I just don't think it has to be.
I don't know what he think he sees or what he think he know. But he going to the hospital, bro. Like, bro, you not winning that fight.
You guys mentioned, I think, D-Style, you mentioned him versus Regis Program. I'd love, that sounds like a...
I don't need you, you know, and PBC and others, in my opinion, it's like, oh, this is my guy. Like, there's a relationship.
Flat out, it's tough, and we call box, and we go to the end of the round, and then...
That would say, what do you mean by acting black? That's a fair question, but a participant of trash talk knows.
And they're announcing a fight 3-4 months from now, and he ain't gonna fight. I bet you anything, he's not gonna fight somebody as good as John Ryder.
All right, we're back with another edition of the Roundtable with another fabulous panel. As always, we're being joined by Lyndon from the Boxing Deep Dive.
Hey, guys.
Mario Munguia is back in the house with us, the incomparable boxing wave, and as always, the CEO of HCP and one of the pioneers of the YouTube boxing community, devastating D-Style Boxing.
I threatened to sue, but I didn't get that intro, so there we go.
Hollywood Hogan of boxing YouTube.
Okay, so we got so much to talk about this week, lots of topics. I think we're gonna kind of go back to last week, Mikaela Mayer versus Tasha Jonas, and all the negative backlash about this fight. Unfortunately, because this was a great fight, I thought it was a fight that was close. A lot of people disagree with me. So because everyone thought this was kind of a one-sided fight, I don't want to say everyone, but a lot of people thought this was a kind of a one-sided fight. A lot of people thought this was a robbery. And Tasha Jonas said she's got one more year left in the sport, and she really wasn't adamant about fighting Mikaela Mayer in a rematch. But if she does not rematch Mikaela Mayer before she calls it a day, will this be a blemish on her resume, on her legacy? D-Style, what do you think, brother?
So I wouldn't say it would be like a blemish on her legacy, but there would definitely be people, you know, saying, hey, I would have loved to have seen that rematch. I don't agree with all the hysteria out there. I watched the fight live. I scored it a draw, actually. And I was very surprised when I saw I'm calling it hysteria. I think a lot of people over-exaggerating, saying Mayer was robbed. It was a home cooking. There's no way Natasha won more than 2 rounds, I saw. The reality is this. I could guarantee you anything, because I saw a lot of 6'4" Mayer, 6'4" Mayer. I could line me up 10 people that scored at 6'4" Mayer, and they don't agree on the rounds. I could almost guarantee you they don't agree on the rounds. I could almost guarantee you they're going to disagree on some rounds here and there. Even they may have it 6'4" Mayer, but they disagree. And if that's the case, then it can go many ways. I saw some people score for Natasha, and I saw some have it a draw. If you look at the judges, the judge, and I know you pointed this out, Beeb, one of them was from the U.S., the one that scored it for Natasha. The whitest scorecard was actually for Mayer, and it was a split decision. It was really, really tight. Again, the whitest scorecard was Mayer's scorecard. I get that it's tough to lose a close decision, but just because a fighter gets a decision in their hometown, it doesn't mean by definition it's a hometown cooking, right? It just doesn't mean that. I just think this was too close of a fight, in my opinion, to call a robbery or a home cooking or anything like that. And look, I've been following Mayer since right when she just missed the Olympics in 2012. That's how long we've been following each other on Twitter. I've been following her that long. I'm a fan of Mayer, but I got to keep it honest. I'm not like a big fan of Jonas or nothing, but if I'm objective, as I try to be when I score fights, I had it 5-5. I thought it was close. But with that said, I do think it warrants a rematch. I do think it warrants them going back out there. And I do believe that both these women are skilled enough and good enough to even do 3-minute rounds. I know Mayer wanted 3-minute rounds. It's the perfect fight to do it. I don't think 3 minutes fits all the women, to be honest, if I'm perfectly honest with you. But these are two women that I do believe can do 3-minute rounds. So not only would I like to see them run it back, I would like to see them do a 3-minute rounds. And I would favor Mayer in that case, because I think a lot of the body work, a lot of the work that Mayer does would benefit her more if she had a little more time every round. But one last thing I'll say, because Mayer closed the fight so strong, right? I think it gave people amnesia of what happened early on in that fight. People just remember her dominating the last 2 rounds, Jonas hanging on for dear life, and that sticks in their head. Mayer won the more decisive rounds. However, could edge out a round, or you can, win it in wide fashion at the end of the day. A 10's a 10 and a 9's a 9, and that's the way you score boxing. But those are my thoughts.
So, Lyndon, was everybody up in arms over Down Under? Do you think that this has to happen, the rematch, or it'll be a miscarriage of justice?
Look, not really. I mean, as far as the fight itself goes, I agree with D-Style. I thought it was really close, and I maybe thought May had just got it, but we go over this a lot. I'm sure on all our shows where the viewers say that such and such fighter got ripped off. I mean, these are close fights. I just went through it a couple of weeks ago with the Jason Maloney Sanchez fight. So many overseas people saying he was robbed. Now, it was a close fight. Now, I wouldn't have argued if Sanchez got the decision, but when it's a really close fight, it can go either way. It is not a robbery. Let's just underline that in capital letters. And I thought the champion in that case should have got the decision, but that's another case. In this one here, same thing. It was a close fight, even though I did have Mayer 6-4. I'm with D-Style. A lot of close rounds. Could have went either way, and maybe a draw would have been the best result. So that's probably as far as the fight goes. As far as fighting again, look, it depends on what's out there for Jonas, I suppose. If she's only got a year to go, maybe she wants to look at other fights. It would be great for us fight fans to see a rematch. But as far as tainting her legacy, if she doesn't fight Mayer, I don't think so. I don't think that'll be the case at all. I would like to see the fight, but I don't think it affects Jonas's legacy if they don't actually fight again this year. And maybe Mayer might go down and fight Baumgartner again. That'd be another fight I would love to see. But, who knows what will happen. But, as far as her legacy, I don't think so. I think she's done well in the sport and have another year to go and maybe have another couple of big fights and call it a day.
So, Mario, you and I, we've gone through this. When we run the Boxing Voice, there's so many instances where this is like deja vu almost, right? We'd get the calls, robbery. Like almost every other week, someone was saying, that's a robbery, this is a robbery. But with that being said, does this have to happen next? Should this be an immediate rematch? Because Tasha Jonas said this is her final year. So she mentioned Katie Taylor as a possible opponent, but Katie Taylor more than likely is going to be she's going to be fighting Chantel Cameron next, I'm assuming. And Jessica McCaskill, I mean, I don't know, is that a better fight than this rematch would be? So what do you think, man? Does this have to happen next, and should it happen next? Does it make sense for this to happen immediately?
Yeah, absolutely. It makes sense for it to happen again. Look, I'm going to agree with everybody. Just so everybody knows, that's exactly how I feel. I think the fight was close, although I did score it for Mikaela. But the fight was close. It was going back and forth. It was a very good fight, okay? I think Jessica McCaskill is very capable of making a good fight with either one of these women. But let's not forget what division we're talking about. We're talking about the women's division that is so under utilized, so under thought of, and has, no depth in terms of fighters. So to have a fight that we know is going to be good, right? There's no question it could be good again, Jonas Mayer, but now you have the storyline to build on. Natasha's, hinting at this retirement. It's kind of like a send her home type of match for Mayer, and also getting revenge. Like, there's so many good storylines that head into a rematch that tell me the promoters and these fighters can't waste this opportunity. The worst thing you can do in the women's division is learn from the men's division, or the best thing you can do is learn from the men's division over the past 2-3 decades. Do not over marinate. Do not piss off fans when they want what they want. And at the end of the day, keep going out there and delivering great fights. Those 3 things help the women's UFC division rise to heights that nobody, including Dana White, ever thought they would get to. And if women's boxing wants to hit that same stratosphere, it has to follow those types of rules. Run it back.
So, Wave, you and I, we've been on, in the minority sometimes of opinion when it comes to these decisions before, and we don't just go with the pack. It seemed like a lot of people were just going with the pack on this one on Twitter. Everyone was just like, it was like a kind of like a snowball effect with this.
Right, as usual.
As usual. We see this play out over and over again, like I just alluded to with Mario. But does this fight have to happen next? Would you be disappointed if Jonas was to fight McCaskill and not fight Mayer? Because I think this would be a better fight. Because no disrespect to McCaskill, but she's not always the greatest opponent to have an aesthetically pleasing fight with. She can kind of muck it up a little bit. But this was a classic for me. This was one of the best fights I've ever seen. I'm not trying to be hyperbolic about it, but this was an outstanding fight. So, in your opinion, should this happen next?
Yeah, I love the fight. I actually watched the fight, and I thought instantly, like, this was one of the better. This to start. Sometimes I don't want to jump the gun and call, a fight, one of the better fights of the year, but I end up thinking that at the end of the fight, it was one of the best fights, especially in women's boxing, that I've seen recently. And yeah, I think people are jumping the gun. I spent a little time on Twitter after the fight just to check the temperature and see what everybody was saying. And I personally scored it for Mayer 94-96 or 96-94. But the way I scored it, there was a lot of swing rounds in there. It's based on what you like. Jonas was landing the good counters. Mayer was coming straight forward, not moving her head. So she was getting hit with counters. And I like what Jonas was doing. I just didn't think it was enough. And I like what Mayer was doing. I know she was moving up, and she's been gradually moving up each division, each fight since the first loss to Alicia. But I knew she was going to be probably the aggressor out there. She's going to be fighting in Liverpool. She fought in Liverpool. So I figured she had to be the aggressor, because if the fight is going to be close, most likely they're going to give it to Jonas. I would love to see a rematch. I kind of figured it might be Terry Harper. It might be, I really didn't know who she's going to fight next. But I would love to see a rematch. I think that it was a great fight. It was a close fight. I'm not screaming robbery at all, because if you look at the scorecards, I think some of those close rounds, 2 of those judges gave it to Jonas, and one of the judges gave all the close rounds to Mayer, in my opinion. So I'm not mad. It takes a lot for me to scream robbery. It takes a lot. This wasn't it. It was a close fight. And it was a good one. I want to see it again immediately. I'm not expecting it, though. I don't think Jonas is going to do it.
And it's funny, Wave, because you said it takes a lot. But I think that comes with just watching so many fights over and over again and kind of getting experience. All of us, I think, when we sit down and we score fights, and then we see sometimes that, well, everyone's saying this happened, but I just didn't see that. So I think when you see yourself in the minority of opinion, a couple times here and there, you start to become a little bit more tolerant of other people's scorecards too. And I think that just comes with experience. And I think, someone like yourself and someone like myself who've watched a lot of these fights, I think that comes with time. I just think that comes with time and just evolving as a boxing fan. And I think a lot of people really need to do that. I just thought I'd put that out there. All right, so Mario's cousin is fighting this weekend, Jaime Munguia, and everyone is looking at this fight against John Ryder like it's a foregone conclusion. And I don't see it that way. I think John Ryder is very live, and I'm actually picking him to upset the apple cart here. Lyndon, is it out of the realm of possibility that John Ryder can sneak into town and just grab this decision and run away with it?
Well, it is boxing. Anything can happen, of course. But look, I'm probably not as excited about this fight as a lot of other people are. I was a little disappointed in Ryder's performance against Canelo. He's obviously Canelo's Canelo, but I didn't think Ryder really came to win that fight. Maybe Munguia might be a little bit different, but yeah, look, he's a sharpshooter, Ryder, and he can punch. And Munguia has been known to be open to some punches, but I just think Munguia, even though he's been a little bit inactive over the last few years, I just think he'll be a little bit too big and strong for Ryder. And I don't maybe see him stopping Ryder, but I think he wins a decisive decision. Should be a good fight though.
All right, shout out to Chauncey Pearls with the $2 super chat. He says D-Style is putting in work today. Shout out. All right. You know, when you look back at Jaime Munguia, D-Style, we've always said that he's vulnerable, right? And he's had some close calls before. Last fight, Derevyanchenko went down to the wire, in my opinion. I thought he eked it out by a point. I had that even in rounds, but he needed that knockdown on my card to win that fight. And I see a lot of similarities between Derevyanchenko and John Ryder. They're both grinders up close. They can really make it rough and tumble on the inside. And when you got a guy like Munguia, long torso, how do you think this plays out? Is this a foregone conclusion like many are saying?
I think this is going to be a tough fight for Jaime Munguia. I think it's going to be a long night, I believe. I know there's people saying he might end it early. And look, it's anything could happen. One punch could change everything. But I think it's going to be a tough fight. I really do. And I like the odds for Ryder a lot, given the fact that, you know, in my opinion, this is a 50-50 fight. It's my opinion. I seen Jaime Munguia get booed in Mexico when he got that bullshit decision against Dennis Hogan. Okay? Like, the Mexicans were booing the decision, saying you didn't win this fight, bro. Okay? So, I see, and Dennis Hogan's the guy that's been knocked out before and went the distance with him. Derevyanchenko was not supposed to. Like, they've been looking for that breakout performance in Munguia, and every time they put him in a position to have a breakout performance, he has a fight of the year candidate. It's fun to watch, but it's not what they're expecting. I think they believe this is going to be okay. Now we're ready to give him that breakout performance. But what we're going to get instead is a tough fight. I like the way Ryder works on the inside. I like his uppercut on the inside against Munguia. I like his body work. I think he is going to land bombs on Munguia. I don't think he's going to knock Munguia out. He may get knocked down a couple times, but I think he's going to give Munguia a tough fight. He's definitely going to bring it. Munguia's a lot. Look, he's hittable. Look, this is what makes him fun to watch, but he's very hittable. He's very vulnerable after he throws combinations. He squares up a lot. That's how Derevyanchenko was catching him. And he saw stars once or twice against Derevyanchenko. And I don't know who hits harder, but I think they're around the same stratosphere, him and see a fight of the year candidate in Phoenix, Arizona. I see a back and forth fight. I'm going to favor Munguia, right? I think the judge is going to lean towards him on all the close rounds. And I think he wins probably a controversial decision in this fight. But here's the thing. Win, lose, or draw, Munguia is must-watch television. He is an action fighter, and I've been saying this for a long time. Golden Boy isn't promoting him right. Look, he's never going to be the guy. He's never going to be the number one pound for pound fighter in boxing. He's never going to be the best in the division. He's never going to be any of those things. All right. But how you can promote him, he's the most exciting fighter in boxing. That's how you can promote him. He could be this generation's Arturo Gatti. And I honest to God, that's not a knock. It honestly isn't. He could be the action fighter of this generation. And when I hear people say things like I don't know, like Munguia's got to fix this, he's got to fix that. No, I want Munguia to stay exactly the way. There's nothing to fix. He's fun to watch. That's how he fights. If he try to fight if he tries to fight like Canelo, he will not have the success Canelo has. Right? He is who he is. Like that. We're not going to change him. We're going to keep him the way he is. I think he wins a close decision. And that is that.
Wave, could it happen 2 weeks in a row, man? Could this one go down on the wire too? And then we go on Twitter, robbery.
Over.
Or
it's
will
possible.
Jaime Munguia just take care of business like most people think?
It's possible. No, I don't think it's one of those fights where he's just going to take care of business. I think, I did a breakdown on this fight during the weekend. And I'm excited for this fight. Why? Because I know who Jaime is. I don't have high expectations. This fight would have been cool. I think the Edgar Berlanga fight would have been cool. I believe that, unless he dominates John Ryder or something, I believe that he's fighting someone that is on his level right now, and I think that that's good. Some of the most recent opponents, not Deverenchenko, but I think 2 or 3 of the opponents before that, I didn't care too much for. But this is a good fight to me. I like the fight. And I think it could be candidate for one of the best fights of the year. I like what Ryder brings. I think Ryder is definitely going to give him some trouble, especially like the way he gets on the inside and knows how to smother you. That could be, Canelo knew how to deal with it because he dealt with it with Kirkland. I think it was Kirkland when Kirkland was doing that very early in the fight. Canelo has experience, so he knows what to do. I'm interested in seeing how Jaime does with that. I'm expecting him to win a very close decision, though. People might scream robbery, but anytime he's in a close competitive fight that goes to the scorecards, people are going to complain. It's all good. I'm like, look, the way I look at Jaime is like, I don't think he's super elite. I think he's very, very good. He's going to look better against certain common opponents that the elite had faced in the past. It's not like with Tank. My problem with Tank, I'm a big Tank fan, but he's not fighting guys that's on his level. So I get mad because I think he's an elite fighter, super elite. I think he has the talent, but he's not proving that. Whereas in Jaime, I don't believe Jaime is that. I think he's a fun fighter. He's going to have his close fights. Pure boxers is going to give him trouble. And this is the right fight, and if he, we talking about Jaime so much. What about John Ryder? He went the distance with Canelo. He's about 35 years old. Yeah, he went the distance, and I know Canelo burnt out a little bit towards the end of the fight. But John took a lot of punishment in that fight with Canelo, and you got to wonder, how much more, he can take. He's been durable throughout his career. I know he got stopped really early in his career. We got to wonder, John Ryder is coming off that loss. How is he going to look in this fight? He might not actually be his best. So I have Jaime winning close decision in a good fight.
Mario, I know this is a tough one for you because it's going to be hard to not be biased because your cousin's fighting this weekend. But
you know how it goes.
Thing is this, right? Munguia has fought a lot of guys smaller than him, right? Bringing guys up in weight. Deverenchenko was really a middleweight, 5'8", 5'7", kind of small guy. John Ryder is not an exceptionally tall guy, but he's a thick, strong guy, right? We know that this is his weight. And I don't think he'll be able to bully John Ryder. John Ryder has wins over Danny Jacobs. Arguably, I thought he beat Callum Smith. So this guy has definitely been around the block. Is this probably a miscalculation on Golden Boy's part, do you think?
You know, I feel like it's not, only because they know where they're at with Jaime. You know what I'm saying? Like, Jaime has been pushed at times very early in his career as the monster, like as a monster, as an up and coming. I mean, they wanted him to fight Triple G on like 2 weeks notice. Like, you know, that was a crazy time when you think about what we expected or thought to expect from Munguia compared to where we are today. I was so surprised how many people are just picking Munguia and like overlooking this fight and don't think it has any value. Did you not watch the Derevyanchenko fight? Like, if that fight tells you anything at all, it's that Jaime Munguia can be hit and he can be hurt. And Derevyanchenko is not the size of the gorilla. Let's be real. Exactly what Beeb said is right. Jaime Munguia is not going to be able to, you know, overpower him or lay and pray and like do the kinds of things that he's used to doing to being able to get, you know, the leg up on his opponent. In this situation, it won't work. Listen, Ryder is one of the livest dogs, and I'm actually kind of upset that the odds are where they are. I expected I was going to get a little better. I'm still going to put some money on Jaime. on Ryder. And it's not that I'm making him my official pick. It's just that this fight is, I'm getting 2-1 on my money. He's like a plus 245, maybe a plus 260. You can find him somewhere. That's fucking primo on a main event. You know what I'm saying? Like, if people want to argue the fact that Jaime's up 4 rounds in the scorecard before the fight starts, and that's why they think it's a full-blown conclusion, okay, fine. I won't argue with that. But if you expect Jaime Munguia to dominate, 8, 9, 10 rounds or more, I'm sorry, that's just crazy. It's not going to happen. The longer this fight goes, the more I suspect that Jaime will be vulnerable, and John Ryder can land that shot. It's an interesting fight. And by the way, there's another little tidbit on that fight card that me and Dee were talking about earlier in the week with Christina Cruz and Fundora's sister. And, you start stacking those underdogs on top of each other. Hey, that's a good weekend payday for real.
Yeah. We know someone who's kind of parlaying the two underdogs together.
I'm gonna do the same shit. Hey, we shouldn't have said this on air though, because I don't want everybody to go and fuck up my odds.
I mean, we'll see what happens.
I get them locked in.
So, Teofimo Lopez in less than 2 weeks, he's got a real tough challenge ahead of him with Jermaine Ortiz. But I find it troubling that this guy is on social media almost every day, and he's talking about fighting other people, and he hasn't mentioned a word about Jermaine Ortiz. We've seen Teofimo up and down. We've seen him look less than stellar against Sandor Martin, right? We've seen him look less than stellar against Pedro Campo. We've seen what happened in the Kambosos fight, right? But then we've also seen what happened against Josh Taylor and Lomachenko. So again, is he looking past Jermaine Ortiz? Is he playing with Fire Mario? Is he going to be 100% for this fight?
I think he is going to be 100%. Listen, I have doubted Teofimo's mental health in the past, and I am now starting to wonder if he's more of a wrestling guy, a wrestling mind business-wise, than he is a boxing guy. And that's to say that he understands promotion, and he understands it really well. There's no saying that he's not working super hard, but utilizing his time in the media to bring up all the names that he knows. Everybody on Twitter, everybody on Instagram, Fight Hub, everybody is just going to pick those, lines apart. The Boxing Voice is going to have the quote for him, on their next show. Like, what are you talking about? This guy is trying to get eyes, I believe, on a fight with Ortiz that he should not overlook. But let's be honest, Ortiz isn't, Haney. He isn't Tank. He isn't Ryan Garcia. He's not even Rolly. I think Jermaine Ortiz is a very good fighter. I think the problem with him over time has been his inability to really focus. He has so much shit in his peripheral. You know, he has friends that own football teams where, you know, he's got like box seats, and it's just a crazy life that this kid lives that you wouldn't even really factor in. But he's so humble. He's so dedicated to his religion and his family. I spoke with him in December after the fight. We had a really good conversation, and I like this kid. I think that he's just been very distracted. He's got a chance, though. He does.
Okay. Wave, I've said this before about Teo. It seems like this kid like thrives off of the chaos. But chaos is one thing and complacency is another. I'm just like, I just find it bizarre, man. Do you think that this could be a problem? This could be, you know, he had that big high, and after the high is the low coming again? Because we've seen this guy like a roller coaster ride.
Yeah, I like to think also that these guys know how to sell a fight. And, you know, I think Teo's learning that now. Do the same thing everybody else is doing. You know, you got a fight coming up, and you're going to mention all the names of the people that the fans want to see you fight. You know, they want to see you talking about, you know, Haney and Ryan and all of these guys. So I think that's what it's about right now. And I'm not really looking at it in any other way. You know, isn't Ortiz working with Bill Haney for this fight?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if this is his main coach or anything now, but I know he's working with Haney. And I mean, if you are fighting someone that's working with Haney, you want to be at your best, you know. And I think he's taking this fight very seriously. And I think the loss to Kambosos made him realize that he can't sleep, can't mess around. You know, as delusional as he's sound in certain interviews, you know, and hasn't seemed to take much accountability to that loss to George. I think he knows what's going on, you know, and I think he's aware, and I think he's going to be ready for this fight. Jermaine Ortiz is a very good boxer. I think he did very well against Vasiliy Lomachenko. And, you know, this guy got good speed. This is not a guy that you can sleep on, you know, because he could beat you on the right night, you know, if you're not ready. He's a guy that I wanted to see a lot of lightweights face, you know. So I'm looking forward to the fight. I'm still leaning towards Teo, but it's a dangerous fight, you know. And Jermaine, again, good speed. I think the speed may be a problem. I'm interested in seeing Teo fight someone that has really good hand speed. Like, that's what I'm looking for the most.
And foot speed too, Wave. This kid's quick all around, really.
Yeah.
It's gonna be an interesting fight, no doubt. Is this smoke and mirrors from Teo D-Style, or does he still have his eyes on the prize here? What do you think?
I don't think he has his eyes on the prize. I think Teofimo Lopez, by his pattern of behavior, overlooks certain guys. He overlooks Sandor Martin. So I don't think he could control his subconscious like thought. I think he's assuming this is a given, because every time he's concentrated on everybody else except his opponent, he always has a flat performance of some sort, right? So that might be happening. Now he's so skilled and he's so good that he may very well just go out there and just wash, you know, Ortiz. But I don't know, man. I think it's going to be a tough fight. I do think he's overlooking him. And look, he's focused on he's talking about Crawford. He's talking about, you know, he's still on, like, he's quote tweeting freaking some random Matchroom card to telling him, I see this is why you guys are going to be out of business in a couple of years. It's bizarre behavior. I don't get it. I just think I'm still strongly favoring him to beat Ortiz, but if you look at his patterns, Teofimo thrives in big fights, especially when he's the underdog and people don't think he could win. When he's the favorite, he doesn't quite thrive. We don't quite see the same Teofimo Lopez, especially when he's distracted like this, and those are my thoughts.
Yeah, Lyndon, I agree with D-Style. I think Teo does much better when he has something to prove, but what does he really have to prove here? I mean, is he up for this fight?
I agree. With D-Style 100%. I think that Tszyu has been found that his concentration can wane, and I think a lot of those outside distractions tend to weigh him down a little bit. I mean, some of the things that come out of his mouth, you just wonder sometimes what planet he's on. I know of course, he has to do it to play up to the to the fight fans out there and the media and all the rest of it. I get that. But like D-Style said, he has struggled with flat performances when he's been the favourite to win. But when he's up, he's up. Don't get me wrong. And we saw it against Lomachenko and his latest fights, of course. But again, against George Kambosos, you could tell that he underestimated George and paid the price. I think a switched-on Tszyu wins this fight quite comfortably, but it's what Tszyu turns up. Let's hope with those big fights out there down the track that he keeps that focus and gets the win. Because don't forget, he only retired, 6 months ago, and now he's back, and who knows what's going to happen. He's made some pretty outlandish statements lately, but let's hope he can get himself switched on, get a good win over Lopez, and maybe set up those fights with the Garcias and Haneys and these types of guys.
All right. Speaking of, keeping in the theme of this show with rumors and potential fights and things that are supposed to be coming down the pike here, Canelo Alvarez. First, they were saying it was going to be Jaime Munguia in May, right? And now another name that's being floated out there is Jermall Charlo. And I guess they're saying David Benavidez will be the fight in September. And looks like possibly it could be Jermall in May. And again, it just seems like these last couple string of opponents for Canelo really haven't been fights that kind of gotten my juices flowing here. I haven't really been excited for a lot of these fights. And, these are fights that you would think that he should be able to win handily. And this is another one too. Wade, do you think this is just a rumor or will this happen? Because it seems like they're trying to, the way it's being presented is they're trying to like push David Benavidez far back as they can, to the end, and have him be like one of the later fights or the final fight in this contract. Because now I'm hearing there may even be a fourth fight added to this deal with PBC. I don't know. I'm hearing so many different things here.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think it is a possibility. I think you never know with Canelo. Canelo is at a point where, he does what he wants to do. I don't think he's sitting around looking at Twitter, reading how people react to his opponents. I haven't been crazy about the last few. I love the schedule he had when he was collecting the belts at 168. I liked the fight against Bivol. I thought that was a great shot at, against a real good fighter. I didn't like the Triple G trio, trilogy. I thought it was way past his time, and I didn't care for John Ryder like that. I like John, just didn't care for it. And then I didn't like the Jermall Charlo. I was so confused, when we heard that. But Jermall is like, at one time I did want that fight. I wasn't one of the people that was saying that Canelo was avoiding him though, but I did want that fight. Never wanted it more than Demetrius Andrade though, but I did want that fight. And it's just not the time, man. Jermall came back and he looked decent, but he didn't fight a middleweight or a super middleweight. He fought a super welterweight, and hey, listen, I get it. I'm just glad, he's back in the mix. But it's not the time for Jermall Charlo to be fighting Canelo Alvarez right now. It's just not. It doesn't matter if I wanted it at some point, and I think that's the argument that Canelo fans are going to make. They were like, oh, you guys were calling for this fight. Yeah, we were calling for it when it made more sense at middleweight. It doesn't make sense right now. The guy is just not active. And he's not well. Jermall should be fighting Caleb Plant, the guy that slapped him. He shouldn't be fighting Canelo Alvarez right now. It is what it is. But to be real, this PBC deal, 3-fight deal, if it's a 3-fight, 4-fight, I'm expecting Benavidez to be the September opponent. I expected that since day one. it's just you're not gonna put him in the middle of that mix. But it, I figured like, okay, well, maybe if he's the second opponent, and if Canelo happened to lose, there'll be a rematch in the third fight. I would like David Morrell to have been the opponent, but that's you can argue that might be equally as dangerous, and Morrell, no one knows him, so he's not going to get the shot right now. Morrell's going to have to beat someone good in order to get Canelo, maybe two people. So I hope if it's Jermall, it's Jermall. I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm not going to be outraged if they announce it. I believe that it is real. I don't want it, but I'm expecting it.
Yeah, looks like this is kind of past its sell-by date, Lyndon. I feel, anyways. What are your thoughts on that? And I mean, how is the public going to accept this? I mean, will they say to themselves, okay, at least we're going to get Benavidez of September, and then that'll be kind of like the consolation on this? How do you look at this whole situation?
Look, to maybe have that Benavidez fight in September, you could almost stomach this fight. But I think it's more than a rumor. I've got this really bad feeling that it's going to be fact pretty soon, and I just don't get it. I've been a really staunch supporter of Canelo over the years. A lot of people have questioned the fights that he's taken, but I could always see the business logic in each one. And he likes to be active as well. So, you can understand the throwing in opponents that maybe shouldn't be there. I get that. But in this fight, I cannot believe, not that he's fighting Charlo, but it's actually the timing of it as well. I mean, he's just fought his brother. So, I mean, us hardcore fans, we know what's up with the difference between the brothers. But how do they sell it to those casual fans out there that maybe watched the first fight? It was an absolute stinker. Now those fans, the uneducated ones, are going to think it's a rematch. Really, really tough sell. I'm with Wave. If it is the Benavidez fight after this, if it's maybe leaked that it's going to be next, then maybe we can stomach it. But, I commented on my show the other night. I always come over for Cinco de Mayo weekend in Vegas. I love it, whether it be Canelo or Mayweather or Pacquiao back in the day or De La Hoya. But I don't think I'll be wasting my money coming over for this. I'm so unexcited about it, if that's a word, and I think I'll save my money for Lomachenko and Kambosos. I think can go to Perth. But look, a really, really tough sell. I think it's really hard to defend Canelo if this is the case, if this is the opponent. But let's just hope we can get this one out of the way and get Benavidez in September. That's the fight we're all after. And as for Morrell, I'm with Wave in that one. I don't think Morrell's done enough so far to earn the Canelo fight. What's he had, 10, 11 fights? I think he needs some sort of big win before he's considered. So, so let's hope we can quickly brush this one aside and get to Benavidez in September.
Mario, I always said that why can't it just be David in May and then have a rematch clause? I think Waves had the same, kind of alluded to that as well. And if for some reason you lose the fight in May, you just fight him again in September. You have two great fights, because I have a hard time, envisioning. I have a hard time envisioning that fight not being a good fight, that fight not being competitive.
Sure.
That is definitely a fight that you would want to do 2 or 3 times, in my opinion.
Sure. And what's being reported, just so we're all, I'm sure y'all know, but it's that Canelo's deal to fight Benavidez this September is probably going to work out in a way where he's going to get a clause that makes it a rematch clause. So there is, and I always speculated that there would be a 4th option on that PBC fight, and it was probably Canelo's option. I highly doubt it was ever going to be PBC's. And if you think of all of this in that kind of way, it makes perfect sense for the biggest fight that all of you want to be last on the PBC card. Like, you're all complaining, and I'm not talking to the panel here. I know you well enough to know, y'all, but everybody else that is talking shit, y'all are complaining. What fight do y'all want other than Benavidez, because we already said it's going to happen in September. What other fight do you want? Now, I'm not saying that I like the Jermall Charlo. It is the worst time in his entire career to make an argument that Jermall Charlo deserves a fight against Canelo. But it cannot be denied that he was pushed and promoted in such a way that he is more casually recognized than any other name that you could come up with, from super middleweight to junior middleweight. And Jermall Charlo's name goes just as far. Let me give y'all a history lesson, because sometimes y'all have a really short memory. Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao avoided each other for fucking years, refused to say each other's names in interviews, including post-fight interviews, meaning there was never any time where they were scheduled to fight. There was never any time where you had like a Wilder Joshua situation where you're like, oh, you know, we're going to fight these guys and then we're going to fight each other next. No, if it wasn't for a fucking waiter at an overpriced restaurant, that fight might have never happened. Here you have Canelo, right? And by the way, how many fights did Floyd have on his Showtime deal until he fought Pacquiao? And remember, he also fought McGregor, and you could say that he's responsible for this whole MMA, Jake Paul, Logan Paul uptick in bullshit boxing. So for all that said and done, Canelo's willing to sign this PBC contract that everybody wanted him to sign, and now they don't want him to fight PBC fighters. It makes no fucking sense to me. And I'm not here trying to defend Canelo, and I'm certainly not defending Jermall, but you all have to remember that these guys were basically paving a path for each other. All these promoters were lining up to do this one thing. And now where are we? We're going to shit the bed and put Morrell in there? That makes more sense. That makes more sense than Jermall Charlo. Like, again, not fucking advocating for Maul. All I'm saying is he signed the PBC contract, so he has to fight a fucking PBC fighter. If he's going to fight the best one, then who gives a fuck who he fights before that? Especially if it's a guy he's already going to beat his ass anyway.
So what you're saying, Mario, is the potential fourth fight would be like a rematch clause type fight if he were to lose with Benavidez. But if he beats Benavidez, is that still going to be an option? Or
I think he sells off. Honestly, I think he probably goes away for a little bit, because the one move Canelo has not pulled that De La Hoya pulled, Mayweather pulled, Pacquiao pulled, all the biggest names in boxing, is the fake retirement. You see, the fake retirement launched Mayweather's career. The fake retirement helped launch Roy Jones's career, commercially speaking. And that's the one thing that Canelo hasn't done. Let him fight these two fights this year. He fucks off for a couple years and let somebody new, Morrell, who knows, get in by then.
Yeah, I think when Canelo's done, he's done. He's got a lot of things going on outside of boxing. I don't know, D-Style. Does that make you feel better about this fight if it were to happen? Did Mario kind of ease the pain a little bit, or what do you think, man? You got some.
Your mic.
Am I the only one who hears it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, you got some mic issues. Yeah, we can't really hear you. Your mic is kind of jacked up. Yeah, I think he's got to kind of fix that. We'll let him come back.
He's so mad that I that I caped for Canelo.
You upset him, yeah.
I know his mic is super pissed.
Yeah.
Yo, can I just respond by saying
go,
this one?
Go ahead, Wave.
I agree with Mario. Mario made a lot of great points. I mean, he signed the deal and he's got to fight those fighters over there, and it's not Canelo's fault that some of those fighters over there are not in the best space. Andre just got his ass kicked. Plenty of us wanted that fight for years. Jermall's having mental health issues, relationship, domestic issues. That's not Canelo's fault. You know what I mean? So I understand that the PBC had to do what it had to do. He already fought Plant. So, it makes sense. Who is he going to fight? That's the deal he signed. He has to fight who's over there. And Benavidez, Al knows that that's the mega one out of all of them, So I'm expecting that to be last. So I think Mario made some great points. Yeah. Again, it's not Canelo's fault that those guys are not in a position to fight him right now, So I do agree with that. I still don't want to see the Jermall fight though, but I understand the options are slim. And David Morrell, again, it's like a lot of people really just don't know who he is. And I would like, to the person in the comment, I would love for Benavidez to fight him now, because
That would be
Benavidez
crazy.
did say, I'm going through all the guys that either Canelo should be fighting or people that are saying that it is the best at super middleweight. Benavidez did say that.
Such a smart move too.
What do you
Can you
think?
hear me now?
Yeah, you good. You good.
Look, Jermall Charlo versus Canelo is not just bad, it's really bad. And it's really bad for a lot of reasons. Jermall, first of all, has never fought in that division, really. He fought in a catchweight against a one-legged Benavidez and couldn't knock him out. He's fought one time in 3 years. He's supposed to be the middleweight champion, by the way. Hasn't defended his belt. It's been 1,000 days. That's amazing. Right? But Mauricio Suleiman somehow still keeps him as a champion. And Adama is just he's like cool with it too, I guess. The whole thing doesn't make any sense. But what are we doing here? Like, what he just fought a Charlo. So you're gonna try to tell the public again. The poster's still gonna say Canelo Charlo. Like you do understand a good portion of the population is gonna be like, he's fighting that dude again. Like what's going on here? So like this is a bad fight. It's worse than I get. Look, I get that Morrell hasn't done nothing, but at least Morrell is active. At least he's fighting. Like I would take that fight any day over Jermall. Any day. I would take Munguia over Jermall. I would take Berlanga over Jermall. I would take a lot of guys over Jermall. I don't even like those fights, but I would take them over Jermall Charlo. They got to be trolling. This is the worst possible fight. You just fought a Charlo in a fight that nobody liked. It was a boring-ass fight, and you're going to try to sell that to the public again, and there's no merits behind it. This is a very inactive guy who couldn't put away a one-legged man. How the hell are you going to sell that to the public? And somebody please explain that to me. Like, I don't think that fight does over 300,000 buys. I don't. Right now, that might be decent for, like, if Tim Tszyu and Thurman do 300,000 here, that's pretty good. But for Canelo, that's a big drop off, right? Canelo, you would think, I mean, you want him to be in the trajectory of 1 million buys. Do the fucking Benavidez fight. Do it in Cinco de Mayo. It's time. Benavidez wins, you do the rematch, Mexican Independence Day weekend. What the hell? What are we waiting on? Well, what are we going to do in September? Well, figure it out. You can figure it out. But right now, Benavidez is the fight. Let me tell you something. And this is a big if, but I do believe Canelo's going to fight him, by the way. I do. His pattern of behavior shows me we may not get it the moment we want it, but we always eventually get what we want from Canelo, right? That's his pattern of behavior. But if we don't get the Benavidez fight this year, if he doesn't fight Benavidez in May, and then he doesn't fight Benavidez in September, and 2004 passes us by and there's no Benavidez fight, I'm sorry. Like, what else am I supposed to think? But maybe you don't want that fight. What am I supposed to think? Well, what do I say to a Paulie Malignaggi that's been saying, you know what, if Canelo, he's never going to, mark my words, he's never going to fight Benavidez. What do I say to Benavidez Sr. who says, yeah, he doesn't want to, we're moving on because he doesn't want to fight my son. Like, he'll fight anybody but my son, right? But what do we say to the Benavidez fans that have been saying, Canelo doesn't want a piece of Benavidez? Now, I don't believe that, by the way. I do think he's going to fight him. But if he goes through the PBC contract and fulfills all his fights in that contract, that's not going to be a good look for Canelo Alvarez. It just isn't. It isn't. I'm telling you right now, it's not going to be a good look. He's going to be hearing it from the Mexican media. He's already hearing it, by the way, from the Mexican media right now. He's going to be hearing it from the Mexican legends, which he already is hearing it now, but it's only going to get worse, right? Saul Canelo Alvarez needs to see David Benavidez. That fight needs to happen. Right. And I understand everyone's sentiment. And I know Boxing Wave mentioned it. Canelo does whatever he wants. Yeah, he can do whatever he wants. However, he's going to have to hear it, though, because we could do whatever we want to. Right. The people with opinions can do whatever they want as well. And he's going to have to hear all that. And I know it already bothers him. It already gets on his nerves now when people loot that he's avoiding Benavidez. Come on, guys. What do you mean, guys? Look at what I've done. Look at him, nothing. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's time to get in the ring with Benavidez. That's all I'm saying. I don't want to see the Jermall fight. It's a trash fight. There's no justifying it, in my opinion. Jermall should go sit down somewhere with his shrink or something, or I don't know what's going on with him, or come back and actually fight some dudes and earn his way into a fight like that. That's how I feel about it. How the hell are you going to fight that dude? But you're not. But I got to hear people tell me that Benavidez doesn't deserve the shot, even though he's a destroyed kid of Plan and Andrade. How is a guy that, like, for years, what have we been saying? Don't sit around and wait on a Canelo payday, right? Go make your own lane and earn the fucking fight. That's what Benavidez has done. So I'm not going to move the goalpost. I'm not going to do it. And I'm not going to turn into a tank fan, right, with Canelo and win fictional fights for him. Well, Canelo beats him anyway. Who cares? No. I want to see the fight. I'm going to stand firm on that. And if I don't get Benavidez this year, I'm going to shred Canelo. Like, it's going to happen. He better do that fight. All right? Now, he don't have to give a damn what I think. If he ever heard this, he'll be like, who's this motherfucker? I think he is like I get that. He don't give a shit what I think. Okay, but he's gonna care if he hears it enough from enough people. Right? And for that reason, I believe we're gonna get this fight. All right. I hope. But that's all I gotta say.
So you don't like the idea of Big Brother trying to get revenge for Little Brother? We can't sell that. Like we can't say Charlo's, like, put the title, the theme of the fight, Charlo's revenge.
How many brothers has we got to fight, bro?
Yeah, but the thing
the
is,
Smith brothers, the freaky like the
Mario.
But the thing is that, listen, in every look, the Ravens aren't going straight to go play San Francisco next, but they're the best team in the NFC, right? So why aren't they playing them? Because there is a logical tournament that the person ends up getting to the Super Bowl. Right. Why should boxing not work the exact same way? Now I agree, D. He fought the guy who wanted him to fight in Andrade, right? But Canelo didn't sign with PBC to make Benavidez's dreams come true. He did it to make millions upon millions of dollars. I don't think that you get to as much money as Canelo can get to by fighting Benavidez first, possibly losing, and then everything else is kind of falls by the wayside. If you're able to keep the momentum that you get into,
Mario, losing hasn't stopped. Mario, losing
hasn't. Bigger fight.
He lost to Bivol and he still made me. He could lose 10 times and people are still going to buy his fights.
No, not against the Charlo. Not against the Charlo. You're telling me if he loses to the head case, and I shouldn't say that, he's really going through shit.
He's a head case.
Jermall Charlo. Okay, you said it. If you're saying that, right? You're saying that it's like a situation where
I don't want to see the fight. I don't want to see Jermall.
I'm not saying I want to see Jermall either. I'm saying that boxing has worked for as long as I can remember, decades upon decades watching the sport, that these are the way that fights are built. When you have a contract with a promoter that has X amount of fights, typically fighters at Canelo, Mayweather, Pacquiao's level, they're laid out for you. You don't think that Pacquiao signed with PBC knowing he's going to fight Thurman, knowing that Spence was on the horizon, knowing that fight was the fight that they were going to make. And that's what I'm saying with Canelo. Benavidez is always the fight to make, but it was always the most dangerous. So if Canelo's going to go ahead and take all these other guys out before he steps into the ring,
but I'm trying to say, Mario,
that's something that I understand. I have the patience to wait for a fight when Mayweather Pacquiao took as long as it took.
But let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. Go for it. If you had a choice in May, who do you want to see? Who do you want to see him fight?
Benavidez.
Oh, that's where the conversation ends to me. Like, I'm not
In a
The
perfect
Mexican,
world,
look,
sure.
I'm not the Mexican like manager for Canelo, and I'm here to look out for him and what's best for him and how he's going to make more money. He's filthy rich.
Sure.
Like he could, if he takes a risky fight and he loses to Benavidez, he's still going to be the fucking face of boxing, just like De La
100%.
Hoya was. De La Hoya lost to Trinidad. He was still the face of boxing.
But if that's
He lost
not
to
good enough for
Mosley. He
him,
lost to Hopkins, and then he went out to break records with Mayweather. He lost that fight. Still did 1 million pay-per-view buys with Pacquiao.
sure.
It doesn't like this whole like, oh, we got to make sure we take the easy route and then leave the dangerous one till the end because he might lose. It's all it's
not.
to me.
Listen, it's not about appeasing Canelo and making sure everything like that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I'm a realist. This is the way boxing works. I never expected ever Benavidez to be one of the first 2 fights in this contract. You know why? Because I saw Mayweather
and the Jermall
do
fight's
this.
a trash fight. It's a trash fight, brother.
Who do you want
we're
to?
gonna
Who
talk
would you?
real.
Okay, what's not a trash fight outside of Benavidez?
Well,
It would take me
levels to
forever
trash.
too.
Like you know
Say
what I
it again,
mean?
I'm
Like,
sorry.
what I'm saying is that's the worst one of all, bro.
Well, okay, well then give me one better.
Munguia. I don't like it, but it's better.
I don't.
I would
think...
rather give it to the guy. If he knocks out Ryder, it's a better fight than the
Just-
dude that hasn't done shit for 3 years.
I'd rather give it to the guy that.
Mario,
Go ahead.
just do David in May, and then if you lose, you do it again in September. And if you beat, guess what? You beat David, then maybe you do Crawford in September.
That's okay.
See,
that's actually a good idea.
Okay,
but
this is
listen,
a bet.
that's
so if you lose to David in May, you rematch him in September. You
okay.
have
Let
two-
me
two
ask you
awesome
that question
fights.
then. Is Crawford better than Jermall Charlo?
Yes.
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 D, do you think it is?
Yeah. Yo, I just wanted to step in and say this real quick. If we're talking about business sense or we're talking about actual fights and how they're going to go as far as being competitive, I would prefer over Jermall right now. I would prefer Terrence Crawford. I would prefer Dave Morrell. I'm not talking business. I'm not talking about what's going to do the better pay-per-view numbers. I would prefer David Morrell. I even prefer Billy right now over Jermall Charlo. I would prefer, and this might be controversial, Demetrius Andrade right now, just because he's been, I just don't think Jermall right now is the right fight for Canelo.
I think that's a fair point.
If you even want to make it business, right? You could even argue because of how long Jermall's been out of the mix. That's number one. Because of how poorly his brother did, and he's going to probably get some backlash for that. You could even argue that David Morrell on Canelo on pay-per-view
Stop,
would probably do the
no,
same.
Dude, come on, Beep.
Mario,
Beep, I've known you for way too long to know that is not. No, you threw that in because you knew what it was going to do when you said it.
You could not disappear for fucking 2.5 years.
You know, stop. You know way too much about how this business works to make the comment that Morrell would do better on pay-per-view than the guy who's.
I am saying it would do equal.
He said as well.
I
still don't even think that's true. You talk about a guy who had, first of all, the PBC card sucked pay-per-view wise.
How many did he do with Jermall? He did like fucking 600.
Yeah. That's not a bad number.
How many is he gonna do with Jermall? Probably 4. He did 400 with Ryder.
I don't.
What I'm trying to tell you is
if that's the case, then he does 100 with Morrell. If that.
This guy can fight a crash test dummy and do 400,000 pay-per-view.
Easy.
Nah.
Easy.
I don't know.
If he fought me,
what do you do with Ryder again?
That era anymore, guys. Everybody watching steals the pay-per-view. Like
no one. Ryder is from the UK. Nobody knows who he is, Mario.
Yeah,
sure,
yeah.
agreed.
He did 400K with him.
Yeah, no. Canelo.
How many pay-per-view buys do you think he does with Jermall?
I would
300.
say probably. I would say your original 4 guess was probably.
How many does he do with Morrell? About 4 too.
No way he does 4 with Morrell.
It's Canelo, Mario. People are gonna see him fight a crash.
Nobody knows. Listen, nobody knows.
Nobody knows who Jermall
that
is either.
Fighter.
Nobody knows who
don't
Jermall
even.
is either.
Oh my God, Beeb, stop.
Jermall did 60,000 pay-per-view
had
buys.
this conversation
I know exactly the way
card.
you. No,
Mario,
stop.
him
You're
and his
making
brother-
no.
him
You're
and his
saying this
brother
because
on
you
the
know
same
exactly what it does to this
They did
conversation, B.
60,000. They did 60,000.
Bullshit. You look. That's fine. That's fine. You know what? Right now, to me, you sound like Trump thinking he fucking got the election stolen. Because I know you're lying. I know you know.
Mario,
I know you
answer me
know.
this question. Mario,
I think he does
Mario,
400 with Jermall.
Answer me this question.
Go ahead.
How many pay-per-view buys has Jermall Charlo sold in his career? What's the most he's ever done?
It's less than 100.
Less than 100,000.
Yeah, but it's not just like I get that people like. Here's the thing.
You sound like you're giving me PBC talking points, bro. You sound like
No,
fucking
that's
Leonard
not
Ellerby.
at all what it is.
You sound like Leonard Ellerby right now.
I would argue, Mario, if you hear me out, I would actually argue that if promoted right, because people want to see Canelo, right?
Sure.
And if you sell that, okay, this unknown contender is really dangerous, might beat Canelo, right? I think that's more sellable than you guys. Hey, you get to watch him fight another Charlo now, right? After what they saw, right? Because the public knows they're not going to get a good fight, bro. Like they know this. They just do.
Mario, you would have been right. You would have been right in what you're saying 2 years ago. You're not right now. With all due respect,
even then, that's
you would have been right.
questionable.
You would
Even
have
then,
been
that's
right.
questionable.
You had a killer argument 2 years ago. Now, now 2.5 years later, after what we just saw with Jermall, and now we're seeing with this guy after what he just did against a guy that was half his size.
Sure.
How good he looked.
Listen,
I mean,
I'm not going to attack your argument at its
can.
core because I can't. Because
I'm
I can't.
Sensitive.
Because
I'm not sensitive. No,
I'm not saying I
argument.
can't do it because I'm gonna hurt your feelings. I'm saying I can't do it because it's too logical. That said, though, let's frame it this way, right? Because you're talking. I'm sorry. You had said that for Morrell, he could basically Canelo could just sell out anything, right? Like he could fight anybody.
Anything. I think his bottom end is 400K. He could fight me and we could do 400K.
So at the end of the day, if he is going to do the same job to get paid more, like we all understand that logic, right? I mean, that's not necessarily how it works. But
I'll concede that.
Okay.
I'll concede that.
Okay. So
I'll concede that.
Yeah.
No,
So for you to make this argument, right, that it's the best fighter that we need for him to fight, and for you to overlook the fact that it's so difficult to find somebody that you can honestly say puts up a better fight, because you're saying Morrell, and look, I get it. Morrell's look great.
I wouldn't even do Morrell. I would do David. Then if I win, I do Crawford.
See,
but
if I
lose to David, I do David again.
And if they did it the other way, is that a problem?
What you're saying is you want to see him do Jermall, then do David. Then if he loses against David, then do it again in May.
What I'm saying is I never, and I know you never did either, expected Benavidez to be one of the first two fights. There was never a point when this news was broken. No, but I know you. I know you well enough to know you knew it.
No, I was hoping he would be the
second. Was going to work.
No, I was hoping he would be the second, and they would throw a rematch clause.
Okay, fine. But now let's real quick say this, right? You can look at Mayweather's record, right? Now, after all this time, we can look at it, and you'll see names like Cotto, Mosley, right? You're going to see all these names, and you're going to be like, oh, wow, man, he beat some really quality fighters, Victor Ortiz. But you're losing the context out of all those things, right? Because so much time has passed that nobody's thinking about the fact that Mayweather weighed in way too much for Juan Manuel Marquez, had to pay him so that he could weigh in more, right? Nobody talks about that. He just beat Marquez. So for Canelo to put both Charlos, the guys for almost a decade that everybody else said was the danger guys, to put on the record. And I'm going to go one step further too. I don't take in a lot of content from, guys like, man, I forgot their names. The two black guys from Barstool Sports. I don't take in a lot of content that is like conservative speaking or whatever, but I can tell you that Jermall and Jermell have made so many rounds on so many podcasts that extend to Black America that I can't believe you'd even for a second argue that
Jermall has been missing for 2.5 years, Mario.
Not in the Black community, he hasn't. He's been doing all the podcasts and sounding crazy. Like,
Yeah, but what they saying that he was a disgrace to the culture or some shit like that, with Jermall, lost.
Point, yeah.
They said they after what Jermall did that last fight. Did you see Drink Champs? They were all calling him. They said he was a disgrace, and I'm not saying.
And I saw what's his name as well.
They said he was a Mace.
They shit on him. They shit on him. I'm not saying they did it.
Jamall's done like one podcast in the last 3 years. Jermall was doing podcasts,
and then
Jermall was doing podcasts. Jermall was in fucking therapy, bro.
Jermall cried in front of what's his name, the former Broncos wide receiver. What's his name?
Yeah, and that's who you want. That's who you're gonna sell to fight Canelo.
They know his name though. That's all. That's the only point I'm trying to make.
Dude that was crying in the podcast like a little girl, like, oh, my feelings, like nobody understands me.
Mario.
That's the point. Go ahead.
Terrence Crawford was on Joe Rogan. He was on fucking The Breakfast Club.
Yeah, he's huge.
Okay. These guys have been around. David Benavidez has done thousands more. David Benavidez was on Hot Boxing with Mike Tyson.
Okay, that's still fight centric or combat sports centric. It's a crossover, but listen.
I just want to say one thing tomorrow. Just one thing.
Go for it,
Mario. That mentality of let's take the easy stuff first, the gimmies, and then take the risk in the back end. All that is one of the biggest problems with boxing, why the sport has lost a lot of popularity in the United States.
Sure,
people know, like, we don't get the fights when we want them. They make us wait years to get it, and it hurts the sport doing it, and it's bad for business. They want to call boxing a business.
Nobody disagrees with that.
But it's bad. But, like, to me, there's no rule that says you got to wait. Like, look, Mayweather's Showtime deal. He fought Robert Guerrero, and then he went to Canelo in his second fight. The year right after that, like, I think he fought Maidana twice, and then he fought, I think it was Pacquiao at the back end, right? But he took on Canelo in the second fight. He took on the young gun very early. Why can't Canelo do the same thing with Benavidez?
I think it's just the way you paint the narrative. Like, that's the way you're saying it now, right? And in 10 years, are we going to look at Canelo's contract because somebody else has got it and say, he fought fucking Jermall, the undisputed top 10 pound for pound? Because what happens? History moves on, and we lose the context.
People still bring up how Roberto Duran didn't have enough time to train. It wasn't in great shape for the rematch with Leonard.
Hey, those are the old heads that bring
up that stuff.
Mario, here's the problem, Mario. I would entertain your argument if I didn't get Golovkin 3, if I didn't get John Ryder, if I didn't get Jermall Charlo. That's 3. You're asking me for 4, Mario?
Okay,
at least, Mario, now check this out.
Okay.
Everyone shit on
Let me ask you a question
Fury,
after you're done.
No problem. Everyone shit on Fury versus Ngannou, me included. I wasn't crazy about that fight, but guess what? Right after we're getting Usyk, we didn't have to get fucking 4 stay busy fights in a row before we got Usyk. I'm gonna let you make your point, and then I'll let Dave get in because I don't want.
I was actually going to ask a question, but now I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to answer it. So during this time, because I agree with you, and that was a great point you made. It was really damaging to my overall case. Golovkin 3 and all these fights that we didn't want, and now we're getting kind of served the same thing, right? During that time, when he was fighting these guys, and you wished for better, wasn't it the PBC stable? That y'all, and not you be specifically, but the loudest part of that crowd, wasn't it them that they were asking for? So when you're talking about these fights that happen and everybody's saying, oh man, if Canelo was real, if he was fighting the real fighters, man, he'd be fighting Jermall, he'd be fighting Andre, he'd be fighting Benavidez, like all that shit was going down like that. Plant, all this stuff. Where are we at now? He's fighting those same guys and nobody fucking likes it, including me. But it is what it fucking is. We got sent down this path, and if it wasn't for the fucking morons who thought Jermall Charlo was this scary boogeyman that Canelo was avoiding and all this bullshit, then we wouldn't be here right now. But at the end of the day, we're here now because everybody said those fighters in the UK suck to fight, and he should be fighting homegrown Americans. Now everybody thinks he's just going to beat those homegrown Americans' asses.
Mario, no one's saying you're wrong in how you have history on your side, that the game has worked that way more often than not. But in recent years, it's been changing. We're gonna get Bivol We're going to get Bivol better beef. We didn't have to wait for it that long. We're getting Fury Usyk. So times are getting better now. We're starting to go into a different direction.
I don't know, waiting for Bivol like
I don't want to go
a little bit.
We haven't waited 5 years like we had to wait for some of these other fights.
Sure.
Probably 3.
And I'd argue we haven't had to wait that long for Canelo Benavidez either. If you take out the fact that he lost his own belt, it was his lack of commitment to training in the sport that cost him this time. So everybody's arguing and debating, oh man, he should be fighting Benavidez, but he should have been fighting. Yeah, he should have fought him a long time ago if Benavidez wouldn't have fucked it up.
Right.
He fucked it up himself.
Let's let Dave get in. He
walked into some Chicano on Chicano violence over here. I overheard both of you guys' points, man. Jermall Charlo fight is absolute trash to me. I will not forget how Montiel almost had him Montiel almost effed him up at 160 pounds. They even think of Montiel as some top tier middleweight. What he did to Jermall Charlo, the long layoff, the history outside of the ring that they have. It's a trash fight. The 2 fights that I think that are very well suited for this May, for Cinco de Mayo, are the winner of this fight, which I think is absolutely going to be Jaime Munguia, and how well Jaime Munguia performs against John Ryder, because it is a barometer. If he can stop John Ryder, all of a sudden we've got an incredible Cinco de Mayo fight. He's said for so long he doesn't want to fight any Mexicans, but the public is demanding it. We've demanded it of Eric Morales, of Barreras. We've always looked forward to these great Mexican on Mexican battles. Now, there's something very important that differentiates Cinco de Mayo from Mexican Independence Day and the type of ticket sales that happen in Las Vegas. Cinco de Mayo is basically an American holiday, while Mexican Independence Day is a national holiday. And this is why I'm going to stress that I would like to see in May Canelo take on either Jaime Munguia or the #1 ranked WBC contender, Mbili. Mbili is a fantastic opponent who has no experience fighting anyone of the caliber of Canelo Alvarez, but he looks damn good. And he just performed, I think they did 800,000 people watching on ESPN a couple of weeks ago. So he's fresh in everybody's mind. He's ranked #1 in 2 sanctioning bodies. It's not like when Canelo fought that sparring partner that was like a fringe contender, ranked number 10. Remember that Stay Busy fight?
Yeah, Yildirim or something.
Yildirim. This huge difference between this former Olympian and Billy, who's ranked #1 in 2 sanctioning bodies. This is a respectable opponent, and also a guy that pretty much does not have the experience to beat Canelo Alvarez, but will look good and will keep us entertained. And the reason why I'm saying we either want to see Jaime Munguia or Mbili in May is because come Mexican Independence Day, you have the potential to put on a fight between the best Mexican-American boxer out there. Yes, I know that Benavidez is mixed race, but he represents Mexican-Americans here, born in the U.S.
His dad is Mexican. He's Mexican.
Exactly. His dad is Mexican. He identifies himself as Mexican-American, but he also pays tribute to his mother's side.
Sure.
Against Canelo Alvarez, the big Mexican superstar face of boxing on Mexican Independence Day, guys. That literally can double the gate. You can charge what they charge for Gennady Golovkin, Canelo Alvarez. That was somewhere around the vicinity of $600 for nosebleeds. Okay? You saved the Benavidez fight for the highest possible gate because Benavidez is dangerous. I don't know who's going to win that fight. That's 50-50. That's a straight up 50-50 fight. If he loses, I agree with you guys who said on the panel, Canelo will still be the face of boxing. Whether he loses to David Benavidez or not, he will not be passing the torch like Mayweather did eventually. Canelo will still be the face of boxing, and it leaves room for that potential matchup against Terrence Bud Crawford, who's got to acclimate and jump up in weight. He's past 35. He has a potential to fight Tim Tszyu for another championship belt at another weight class. Let that marinate. If Canelo ends up losing in September, then he can relax and say, well, I'll take on this Terrence Crawford fight. Maybe Cinco de Mayo 2025, or maybe early 2025 against Terrence Crawford. It gives Terrence Crawford all this year to gain some weight, to grow into his body, and to have a fight that basically is a glorified exhibition against future boxing legend, guaranteed Hall of Famer in Terrence Crawford and Canelo Alvarez, then that fight really makes sense. And it gives us ample time to see if Terrence Crawford will fight Tim Tszyu this year, something I want to see. And that's why I'm adamant. I don't need to see David Benavidez in May. There's a couple of really good contenders. David Morrell's great, guys, but David Morrell is way too dangerous, high risk, low reward. And I agree with you, Beeb. David Morrell would sell just as many seats as Jermall Charlo. Jermall Charlo, unfortunately, is past his prime. He's past his prime. You could easily sell the story that David Morrell has, that he literally just a couple fights ago put a guy in a coma. That's how dangerous David Morrell is. Almost killed a guy. And you could easily sell just as many seats as the Jermall Charlo. Does Canelo want to fight a guy like David Morrell? I don't blame him. No.
I get you, man. Made some good points. Dave, I wasn't crazy about the Munguia fight, but I'll tell you this. If I'm given a choice, Munguia or Charlo, I'll take Munguia.
Well, you know Munguia is going to bring it. But you know he lacks the experience.
You sold me that with the Mexican independent, the Mexican Cinco de Mayo. You sold that to me a little bit. So Mario tried to sell me the Charlo fight. He did a great job, but you just hammered it home a little bit better. I'm sorry. I gotta say that. All right. I don't know. This JXV88, the $2 super chat said, Nella hits Benna with a rehydration clause. Will you be mad?
It's a good,
dude.
That's a good
I
question.
don't understand. Like, has there ever been a rehydration clause in any Canelo fight? All I hear is these rumors, and they've never been proven. I mean, I don't know.
Look, just to answer the question, of course I wouldn't like it. I just don't think it's gonna happen.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen, bro. Come on.
It would be a really sad state to see the guy who's fought more than all the top fighters like Floyd and Pacquiao per year, the guy who's tried so hard to change A-side boxing for the best, to revert to one of the ugliest A-side tactics that there is in the game. That would be sad.
Absolutely, man. All right. Let's go on to the big news of the week. And that is Tim Tszyu versus you better not duck me, fun, Keith Thurman. Right?
How long ago was that when he stormed into Paulie Malignaggi's press conferences?
14, maybe?
Yeah, that was a long time.
When Keith Thurman was the hunter. That was a long time ago, man.
Now, I don't know, man. I kind of got mixed emotions about this one. Now, this is where I think Mario's argument comes into play, because they tried to do the fight with Lubin. That fell through. I'm not crazy about this fight either, but I'm more tolerant towards this fight because I'm hearing now that they're going to be targeting Crawford or Virgil Ortiz at the end of the year. So again, they're already kind of mapping it out. So I have a little bit more tolerance, like I said, but we're gonna have to talk to someone who has more experience, and that's Lyndon, because he's in the mix over there. He knows what's going on the Australian boxing scene. How are the Australian fans taken to this? Because they pretty much love anything Tim Tszyu does. Yeah,
they do. And you got to remember, the boxing community in Australia is very, very small, obviously, compared to you guys over there or England or wherever. So the fight fans in Australia, they lead it up. It's big news over here. Tim Tszyu against anyone. I don't think it's really the Thurman factor. It's the fact that Tim Tszyu is fighting a main event at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. That is the story. As I said, I don't think many people actually know who Thurman is, except for the real hardcore, which again is very small. So, look, I love it, and you guys, I love the interview this morning, by the way, with Glenn Jennings. I think it's great that he comes on and at a moment's notice and lets everyone know what's going on. But you heard him say they just wanted the best available, and had it been Crawford, they would have been fighting Crawford. The Lubin thing, obviously, there's different stories on each side of what happened there, but Tim just wants to get to the big smoke in the USA, which is obviously Las Vegas. And as I said, I don't really think it matters who the opponent was. I was really surprised that it was Thurman, I will say. I didn't expect that, but it is what it is. And as I said, I think they just wanted the best fighter they could get for Tim at the time. I'm not I'm not quite sure. Maybe Thurman is the biggest name that might have been available, but considering his inactivity. But look, he's a big name, obviously, over there, which is maybe what they looked at as well. Maybe an easier sell. And look, I love it. The fact that Michael Zarafa's on the undercard as well, another Aussie fighting for the WBA middleweight title. I think that's great. News over here, not so much big news over there, but over here, the fact that Tszyu and Zarafa are on the same card could potentially lead to an all-Aussie super fight down here. I know it would mean nothing over there, but it would be big here. And I just love the fact that, as I said, he's got the fight in the States, MGM Grand. I'll be there. A lot of Aussies will be making the track over there. Tim is super popular here. And I think you'll see, not so much like the British were when Ricky Hatton was coming to town, but I think you'll see a bit of a wave of Aussies coming in, and it should be great. It's a little bit of a shame it's not on the weekend of the rugby league show they're doing at the Allegiant Stadium. But it is what it is. PBC dictate the dates and everything else. So, yeah, I think it's great. And I know it hasn't been received that well over there, considering a lot of the comments either in here or on social media. But I think D-Style mentioned it this morning as well. PBC would have had a schedule they would have had to have kept to get these fights in over the course of the year. So being so early in the year as well would have made it a little bit harder as well to get these quality fights together. But look, as an Aussie, can't wait. Love it. Can't wait to see our man on the big stage, Zarafa on the undercard. And yeah, should be massive for Aussie boxing.
D-Style, like Lyndon said, I mean, they had to have a schedule. They had to get these fights out there. Was this just an inevitable, man? Was there any other recourse here but this fight?
I don't look. From my understanding, anybody could check the interview if you want. Thurman wasn't even one of the main names that were first proposed. He was like kind of the second line, and he popped up with other opponents, better opponents, like in my opinion anyway, like Lubin. From my understanding, priced themselves out. Like it is what it is. So they had to move on. And they were racing against the clock, and the Thurman fight presented itself, and it sounds like that was an easy fight to make once it was proposed, and they got it done. I'm not jumping up and down about the fight, but I don't like the fact that it's pay-per-view here. I don't that falls on PBC, that falls on, it's on the same weekend as the Final Four. It's on Easter weekend. They have a lot of things working against it, like a lot. So it is, people are doing stuff on Easter weekend with family. Like, you know what I mean? The Final Four is very popular here. So they're competing with that. Not only are you competing with that, you're charging people. There's a paywall to watch, right? So there's a lot of factors that they're going up against. I think the best thing to have done is put the card out, have it just part of the Amazon Prime, no pay-per-view price, more eyeballs, more people would have tuned in, and you introduce your PBC brand that way to the Amazon Prime audience. That's what I think they should have done, right? They may, I don't know if it's the inflated, maybe it's an inflated purse that Keith Thurman wants, so they got to subsidize it with pay-per-view. I don't know, right? But I think, maybe if it was Lubin, it wouldn't have been pay-per-view. I really don't know, and I should have maybe asked that. But I think the fact that it's Thurman and maybe, look, Thurman has been looking for a big fight. So for him to take this fight, there was somewhat of a price tag that came with it. And I think that's why it's on pay-per-view. It was pointed out to me that here it's Thurman Tszyu, and in Australia it's Tszyu Thurman. So it's going to be interesting to see who walks out to the ring first, second, who gets introduced first or second. I honestly don't care. It's whatever to me. But that's been pointed out, and I just hate the fact that if it wasn't pay-per-view, I could deal with it a little better. But here's what I do know, right? We know Tim Tszyu is going to be back in 3-4 months, right? He's active, right? So we have to, like, the pay-per-view thing aside, which I don't like, we have to judge who guys fight, and you have to put it in perspective, okay? That's why when Canelo fought freaking Yildirim, And people were in a big, thing. Oh, he's fighting. Why is he fighting Yildirim? Well, he fought like 2 months ago against Smith, and he'll be back in 2 months and fight Billy Joe. Like, it's not a big deal, right? So you have to put things in perspective. Yes, he's fighting Thurman, but look, one thing, if this gives anybody any solace, look, the conversations with Crawford are very serious. They're having very serious conversations with the Crawford camp about a potential fight with Tim Tszyu, and I think that's a massive fight. And other names out there like Errol Spence and Virgil Ortiz is kind of on the outside a little bit, but we're gonna get a big Tim Tszyu fight down the line. So because of that, I can deal with it and live with it.
So we're more than likely going to get a really nice fight probably by the end of the year from Tim Tszyu.
We are. Look, he's an active fighter. Let's judge things. Let's put it in perspective, right? If Tim Tszyu was only fighting once a year and this is the fight, I'd be all pissed off about it. You know what I mean? But he's going to be back. He's literally going to be back in 3-4 months. So it is what it is.
Okay, so Wave, we're getting Fury versus Usyk in February. That's one pay-per-view, top ranked Queensberry promotion. Then March 8th, we're getting Ngannou versus AJ, little Matchroom Queensberry promotion. So that's 2 pay-per-views. And then at the end of March, after paying for a pay-per-view on March 8th, we're going to be asked to make another purchase of a pay-per-view on March 30th. And this is nowhere near the level of event, in my opinion. I think most people would agree, than those 2 events I just mentioned. Are people going to go into their pocket a third time in such a short period of time?
Absolutely not. This is a streamer's dream. It's not a bad fight. It's about the timing that's the problem. Keith taking a fight, being out the game for 2 years, taking a fight again, being out the game for 2 years. It's just an inactivity. He's just way too volatile as far as activity. He's not fighting enough. And I remember him saying specifically after the Barrios fight or during the Barrios fight how good he feels, how he's going to stay active and all of this stuff. And I know it's not in any of their control over there in the PBC. What's happened in the last couple of years, especially this past year, with business and, Showtime, it's really not their fault. There's just so many better fights, and it's not a bad fight. I mean, if you look at it from Tim Tszyu side, Thurman is arguably the most accomplished fighter he's faced. And if you're looking at Keith's side, if Keith is to win, he's back in a loop like right away. You know what I mean? Like, people are going to be talking about him right away, because when it comes to Tim Tszyu, people are already saying that he's the best at 154. Many people believe that Jermall avoided him. We know that he took the Canelo fight because that's the better matchup. You're going to make more money. But a lot of people just feel that Jermall never really wanted to fight him, And Tszyu has been very, very active. It's a good name to have on his resume. Pay-per-view wise, it sucks, but it's not a bad fight at all. I just think the timing is bad because Keith, having fought at 154, not active at all, older fighter at this point. It's like, how much can he really do at this point? I just think that it's high risk. I don't know how much of a reward. I don't know what they're paying him, but I just don't see his chances of winning this. I did really like the Stan Jonas fight. I love that fight. I thought that fight was the proper fight for Tim. I would actually like the Crawford fight. I actually like that fight. This fight kind of makes, I don't want to say it makes no sense. It's not a bad matchup at all. I'm not mad at the matchup. It's just the timing, man. It's just doesn't really make sense right now. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, it's a pay-per-view. What are they going to do? It seems like it's the same old business strategies, and going into the new year with Amazon, and we just got to see how it go. People are not going to pay, man. A lot of those late of end of the year pay-per-views like Haney and who the Haney, Prograis and Benavidez against Andre, they didn't do well because we was getting cooked with pay-per-views, man. Every 2 weeks it was another pay-per-view.
Gotta spread them out a little better.
Yeah, it's just bad timing all around, but I love Keith, man. I'm gonna be rooting for him. I don't think he's gonna win, but I like Tim though. I like what he's doing, So that's my thoughts.
All right, Dave. Hypothetically, I'm gonna put a gun to your head. Just hypothetically, I'm not gonna really do it, but putting a gun to your head, you got a choice. You have to buy one or the other. Canelo Alvarez versus Jermall Charlo, or Keith Thurman versus Tim Tszyu. Which one you gonna buy? Got the gun right there.
Canelo.
You gotta buy the Canelo.
I mean, it's Cinco de Mayo. It's Cinco de Mayo. I mean, you gotta get some Mexican food, some tequila. You still gotta celebrate Cinco de Mayo. You're not gonna watch a fight on a pay-per-view. It's tradition around here.
What did Mario text you? Tell you to say that?
I'll take the Jermall Charlo. I'm still gonna watch that fight. When I heard the news today, man, I was so thoroughly disappointed. Quite honestly, I really appreciate what Tim Tszyu did last year in 2023, winning that title. This is a major step back, and quite honestly, it saddens me because I was rooting for Jesus Ramos Jr. in his professional career so bad, and he fumbled that bag so badly as the co-main event to Canelo Alvarez. That was his opportunity for him and his team to be in position to fight Tim Tszyu. And all of a sudden, the conversation went to the winner, Lubin. It was him and his team who took their foot off the gas in that fight. That was their moment to shine. That was their moment to rise to the occasion to be in position for a title championship fight against Tim Tszyu. Even then, I don't think Jesus Ramos Jr., who, he's fought on television. He was the co-main for even if he had won that fight, I don't think it would have merited this being a pay-per-view fight, because I think that it was a disservice to Tim Tszyu to put him on as a pay-per-view type fighter in the U.S., making his debut in Las Vegas. Strategically, the complete wrong move. This reminds me of Conor Benn fighting Chris Algieri, bringing up 140-pound former champion Chris Algieri just to come in and get knocked the F out. And that's exactly what's going to happen to Keith one-time Thurman. He's going to get hurt potentially badly in there against Tim Tszyu. But who's going to see it? When you have such a marketable personality in Tim Tszyu, someone with so much crossover potential, plus he has this father who had such a big name in the U.S., you kind of putting a detriment to his brand by doing this pay-per-view. Honestly, it would have been a much better fight had you removed the pay-per-view and actually had him fight a real contender at 154 pounds. Even Fundora coming off a loss is more exciting to me. Fundora or Jesus Ramos Jr., I know he lost that close decision, but even those type of fighters, to introduce Tim Tszyu to the American audience, I think that would have been the right move early on and save this pay-per-view for Virgil Ortiz or Terrence Bud Crawford. But build up that brand firsthand. Overall, this PBC card is kind of a disappointment. It's a lousy pay-per-view and just an okay made-for-TV Showtime card. That's all it is. Lousy pay-per-view, okay card.
I mean, you got Rolly Romero versus Isaac Cruz.
But he's dragging up Isaac Cruz. Isaac Cruz is what? He's got the body type of an inflated featherweight.
Ooh.
He's what, 5'5"? He's 5'5", 5'6"?
Who?
Come on.
Cruz is 5'1", bro. What is that about?
That doesn't excite me. I mean, Isaac Cruz is going to be slow as molasses at 140 pounds. He's going to be soft around the midsection.
Who wins that fight, Dave? Who wins that fight? Rolly or Isaac?
I think it'll be close. Quite honestly, I don't think much of Rolly's skill set. He's a great trash talker. His performance at 140 pounds, we saw how he did against Barroso. He probably was on his way to losing that fight. It's going to be competitive. It's going to be exciting, but Isaac Cruz is not a 140-pound fighter. He shouldn't even be up there. He probably would be more effective losing weight and entertaining a title, trying to go for a title at 130. They're just selling names here. That's what they're doing. Isaac Cruz, he fought Gervonta Tank Davis. You know who he is, and he's going to fight the big trash talker. But it's really, as far as fights that could be made at 140 pounds, It's not a great fight. You know, that's why I say this whole card is just okay, but a lousy pay-per-view.
Yeah. So Mario, this was very surprising, but even more surprising that it's going to be on pay-per-view. In your opinion, would this be more tolerable if it wasn't on pay-per-view? Like Dave said, is this not a bad fight if it was just a regular standard fight? Regular Amazon.
Yeah, of course. I mean, for them to have the same exact card, but it's just free, you know, especially if it was like on network TV, that'd be even better. Then it's a great card. It really is. Listen, the last 24 hours of boxing news has been freaking crazy. I was up last night around midnight, 1 a.m. when the news came in. I saw it from Michael Benson, but I know that it had came out before that, that this was going to be a title match. They were going to fight for the title, which was originally reported. That's what I was really disappointed. I was not surprised that it was a pay-per-view. You know, for all of us that have been covering what's been going on with PBC, there are a lot of very credible reports that PBC has no plans to do non-pay-per-view right now. I'm not saying that Prime isn't going to have non-pay-per-view fights, but the truth is there aren't any planned right now. And all they've confirmed is that there are 2 pay-per-view planned. Now, another little side bit, because I do cover wrestling as well. Amazon Prime wanted to land that WWE deal so bad. They were going hard at it. Okay?
Wow, okay.
Netflix ended up winning, and the people at Prime were very upset. The guy who landed the deal with PBC from Prime was let go about a week after the announcement. Now, I'm not saying that these two things are connected, but what I can say is that Prime seemed more to believe that WWE was in their best future as opposed to boxing. That's from what I heard. The other thing about it is what we're hearing from companies that have been absorbed by Prime, Amazon, over the past couple years, MGM, a couple other, is that they're not staying true to their word about staying true to these genres. You know, they're going back on their promise to put out more movies. And basically what everybody's saying is Prime is absorbing all these things, all these tenets and genres to sell toasters, to sell fucking TVs and iPhones and all the bullshit. That's what their real, you know, business proposal is. So it's not that they're trying to build up boxing. It's that they're trying to build their live library. You know, they already have MMA in one fighting, right? So they have like MMA and kind of Muay Thai stuff, but that's it, you know, and then they have the football, and that's been such a huge thing that they've been so interested in this live stuff. So boxing has the chance here to really do something and prove to Prime that can be a viable thing, but this card is not it. Now, I'm not even disappointed in Thurman as an opponent after it was announced that it's going to be at 155 and no longer for a title. Excuse me. The thing about it is that Tim Tszyu has fought credible fighters. He's been one of the guys that is willing to fight the best. He's proved that to me, and I know he's proved that to everybody on this panel. So to give him an easy fight is a weird word. I don't like using that term, but to give him kind of, you know, one of these soft touches, stay busy fight against a guy like Thurman, who has experience in there with Pacquiao, who has that commercial name. What this serves to do is not to build Tim Tszyu up as a fighter. I mean, maybe a little bit, sure, but this is to get him the commercial appeal that he so desperately needs in America. I think Americans would get behind Tim Tszyu. You know, I think they would be excited to be a fan of his and see the kind of fighting that he's capable of producing, but he needs those big names. Thurman is one of those big names, and a name like that, especially, imagine if he dusts Thurman. Imagine if that happens. That would catapult Tim Tszyu to other heights that wouldn't be achieved if he fought Lubin. And by the way, I feel like there's a part of Tim Tszyu that needs to kind of stay away from that merry-go-round that we saw for 5-6 years that said Mel was the best of all of them. They all had their shot, and none of them could do it. So, you know, I think this is Tim Tszyu's time.
Damn, and No Limit should hire you to sell the trademark.
Let's do it. I think it's the same situation, honestly, with Canelo. It's about building, you know, whether it's right or wrong for each. You know, I'm just going to watch the fights. You're on mute, Beeb.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. All right. Well, we're down to the home stretch, and we got one left, and it's been announced. Vasiliy Lomachenko will be taking on George Kambosos for the vacant IBF lightweight title on May 12th. A lot of people aren't crazy. We're talking about a lot of fights that people aren't really crazy about. And we have some fights that people are excited about, but sprinkled in are some of these other ones that are Metza, right? And this is another one of those fights that I look at as being Metza. But once again, there could be some light at the end of the rainbow, light at the end of the tunnel. If the winner of this fight were to fight Vasiliy Lomachenko, that would be not Vasiliy Lomachenko. The winner of this fight would fight Shakur Stevenson, right, in a unification fight. So this would be great if that was the case. D-Style, do you think that that's the plan here? Because again, you got Lomachenko as a top-ranked fighter, Shakur Stevenson is a top-ranked fighter, and I think they have options on Kambosos as well. Mm-hmm. So it makes all the sense in the world that this can kind of be like a round robin.
Look, I actually don't dislike the fight as much as people out there are saying. Like, there's many reasons here, right? Kambosos didn't have his best performance in Oklahoma, right? Like, I get it. But officially he got the win. He did lose to Devin Haney in a stylistic nightmare for him, quite frankly, right? It is what it is. But he does have, like, regardless of what we think, right, he does have that big, massive win over Teofimo Lopez. Like that happened that night at the Garden. He still got that win, right? If we want to say, well, he wasn't 100%, it took him lightly, none of those things are Kambosos' fault, and it doesn't strip the record. Lomachenko was given a short end of the stick in a fight I feel he won, but could have gone either way. It was a close fight. I'm not screaming robbery, but he's coming off a loss, right? So to judge Loma the same way and have the same expectations for Lomachenko that we do for Canelo or for Tank or guys that are on top, we have high expectations for them. Lomachenko has fought the who's who, weight class after weight class. He's got equity. Like, I'm okay. Kambosos is a top 5 fighter in the weight class. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a bad fight. He's going to his home country to fight him. I never even heard of Perth, or however you pronounce it. Why not Sydney? Why not Melbourne? I don't know. Right? But it's whatever.
Money.
Okay, well, there you go.
Perth is pretty big too, isn't it?
It's a long way from the other eastern cities, though. A long way, about a 4-hour flight.
Wow, that's crazy. So I don't mind the fight personally. I think Lomachenko wins. I think he wins easily, quite frankly. But I don't mind the fight, and I do believe Lomachenko when he says, "My goal is to become undisputed champion." That's the one thing he never accomplished, and it's the one thing he saw. And if he wants to do it, he's got to fight the Kambosos and get that belt, right? And then if it's a Shakur fight, then I'm all for it. Like, and I do believe he'll fight Shakur if it means it's a unification. I do believe that. So I actually don't mind the fight. I just don't. And I get it. People will say things like, "Well, you're okay with this fight, but you're criticizing Canelo for fighting Jermall." Like, again, perspective. Where is each guy at right now? Like all those things matter. So I like the fight. I don't mind it, to be honest.
What do you think, Mario? Vasiliy Lomachenko, George Kambosos. Does George Kambosos have a shot? And like I said, would the winner get Shakur Stevenson?
I think Kambosos has a shot, right? I think that when you're a guy who's been able to upset the apple cart in the past, it's something that you are able to maybe not, completely replicate every time out, but you know what that feels like. You know that if you stay true to certain aspects of your game within a fight, that it can pay off. Like, there's just a lot of confidence that you can take into that. And Kambosos has all that. That said, I think a big part of this too is where Lomachenko's at. He hasn't been as active, and there's a war that's tearing his country apart. And so with all that, like, what kind of version of Lomachenko is left, or what kind do we get on fight night? If he's anything resembling the guy that walked in there with Devin Haney, I fully expect him to win, and I will pick him. That said, you can't overlook Kambosos. One other real quick point though is, man, I'll be honest, I can't even call this anymore. Between Teofimo, Shakur, and all these guys that seem to be like on the verge of making fights. And I mean, look, Ryan Garcia told everybody last night that he was fighting Rolly Romero. Then he wakes up to news that Rolly Romero is fighting Cruz. Listen, first of all, Ryan did that shit to himself. He's a moron. He needs to understand the way that boxing works, promotionally speaking. What he's doing by out speaking his promoter, it's only hurting him, whether he understands that or not. And to go further, it's like all these fights at 135 and 140 seem so fluid that I think that the person that comes out last and has the best type of performance is the guy that's always closest to that big fight. So it definitely could be Lomachenko if he goes out there and has a spectacular performance.
What do you think, Wave? Kambosos got a shot here.
Nah, I think Lomachenko's gonna win. I'm not really that mad at the fight because Lomachenko's coming off a loss, and I think he's fighting a guy that they have the common opponent in Tszyu. Loma lost to him. I actually think Tszyu looked the best against Lomachenko out of everybody. And, George beat him in the very next fight. And, for George, I think this is his last opportunity to, pull off a big win. And for Loma to, make sure he's still in the mix. I'm expecting Lomachenko to win. And I hope the winner of this fight does fight Shakur Stevenson, because I know before they announced this fight, I think, I was hoping that Lomachenko did fight Shakur, but he's taking this fight instead, and this is a title fight. So hopefully the winner of this fight unifies with Shakur. I don't know what's going on with the other two titles. I think Tank got elevated, and I'm not expecting Tank to fight anybody. I actually want to see him fight, unfortunately. So, I'm good with this fight. I'm not mad at it at all. I think George, he's only lost to one person officially. And that's Devin Haney, and it's not a bad loss. And I think he deserves another shot against someone really good like Loma. But I'm expecting Loma to win, man. I think Loma is good. Not to diss George or anything, but I never was complete. I watched him for a long time, and I was never completely sold on him before the Teofimo Lopez fight. And I think after the fight, I still am like unsure of how I really feel about George. I think he's good. I think he's solid. But I just think that he caught Tszyu on a great night. Tszyu came with the wrong mind state, and his father coaching in the corner was poor. Think they was going to just go in there and knock him out, and it didn't work out that way. George is very durable. I know he's a warrior, but as far as overall, never really thought that highly of him. I thought he was solid, and I think Lomachenko's going to show you that there's levels in this fight.
Gotcha. So, Lyndon, is there a buzz for this fight in Australia, man? Is George a big name over there?
Yeah, there will be. I think it's officially announced next week, I think. I think they're going to do it. It's actually in Perth because over here in Australia, there's massive competition between the capital cities about bringing major events to the city. We've seen it Melbourne, Sydney, the Gold Coast, which had the last Tim Tszyu fight, and now Perth. We had it in Adelaide. Was it 5 or 6 years ago when Mundine Green a rematch? So, and that's not a real fight town. So that's why it's in Perth. So, but I'm not. I'll probably make the track over there, but it's not a bad option in Perth. It's a long way from the action. As I said, it's a 4 to 4.5 hour flight from Melbourne or Sydney, so it's a fair way. But as I say, money talks, and these days it's all about the pay-per-views anyway, so I'm sure that won't be an issue. But for the fight itself, I must admit, I've got to take my Australian hat off here because, of course, I'm one-eyed George, but I actually, as a boxing fan, really like the fight. When we talk about Kambosos, I know the common consensus out there is that I won't say it was a lucky night, but he caught Teofimo on an off night, all these sorts of things. I just thought it was a fighter who had the best camp, the best physical and mental attitude, and yet Lopez might have been a fraction off that night. But I think it's a little bit of a slight on George to take anything away from that performance, because it was a true Spartan warrior performance. Excuse the pun there for George, who's Greek. But I really like this fight. I think, granted that George didn't look good in his last fight against Hughes. I was actually there and thought Hughes did enough to win. But as I say, styles make fights. And I really think George has the style to make it hard for Kambosos, whether that's for Lomachenko, whether that's enough to beat Lomachenko remains to be seen. But I think style-wise, the fact he's in Australia, the Haney style for Kambosos was all wrong, and that spoke for itself in the results. But I really think the two gel together really well, and I think we're going to get a very, very even fight. I think Kambosos can win. It's a matter of whether he can pull off another Lopez-type performance and get Lomachenko, who hasn't fought since Haney, it will be nearly a year by the time they fought. At 30, was he 36, 37? So that might come into it as well. But I really like the fight. As I said, take the Australian bias away. I really like the fight as a fight fan, and can't wait to see it in person.
All right, Dave. Hypothetically speaking, Vasiliy Lomachenko versus George Kambosos on the same night as Keith Thurman versus Tim Tszyu. Which one you tuning in for?
Lomachenko. Hypothetically speaking. Shout out to Perth. I had to look that up. I had no idea geographically. It sits on the West Coast, and it looks it's a much more cleaner and beautiful version of San Francisco, the Bay Area, but it looks like the Australian version of the Bay Area. It's quite beautiful. So shout out to Perth.
Beautiful city. They had the UFC there last year as well. It's a beautiful city of about 1 million people. So just
you
right.
Going, Dave? Are you going, Dave?
I just gotta give it praise. It looks like a beautiful version, Australian version of the San Francisco Bay Area where I'm from. This fight don't interest me. I'm not interested in Kambosos. Kambosos has a great story. It's the type of stuff that Hollywood is made out of. If you could write a perfect Hollywood boxing script, his story would be right up there. What he did against Teofimo was at the stars aligned that night. This is a fighter a fringe guy who fought at a level 110% of what he was capable of that night. And for whatever reason, Teofimo, whether it was the truth about that mysterious illness that affected his lungs, his mental state, everything aligned perfectly for Kambosos that night. But that's it. The guy who performed against Haney and lost twice, who basically got outboxed, that's the same guy we're going to see in Perth, Australia against Lomachenko. And it bores me because really this fight could have been made pre the Ukraine conflict. And then it would have been much, much more interesting to me. Now, Lomachenko is over the age of 35 now. I thought he should have got the nod against Devin Haney personally, and I was there. And the crowd, in my mind, the crowd was behind Lomachenko. They thought Lomachenko won that fight too. He didn't get the nod. But what does excite me is when Lomachenko does pick up this win, is the potential for unification with a slick boxer. Hopefully he performs a lot better than he did on F1 Formula Weekend with Shakur Stevenson. That does excite me. That's interesting. That's the sweet science. That's the best of the sweet science. The young, hungry lion and the aging veteran champion for a unification. That's interesting to me. What's also interesting to me is whether or not Lomachenko can finally convince Gervonta Tank Davis to fight him in a unification. That's an exciting unification. And lastly, Top Rank has the potential to do something special, and that's bring up El Vaquero, Navarrete, who holds a belt at 130. I saw and read that Navarrete's team said that they have no interest in fighting somebody the likes of Shakur Stevenson. But I bet you anything, a fight, not a unification, but a fight against Lomachenko would greatly interest them. And styles make fights, and that excites me.
All right, that'll do it, guys. It's been a interesting show today. Great topics. And we will see you next week on D-Style Boxing's channel. Everyone have a great one. Thank you, everyone in the chat. Thank you, the panel.
Peace.
Thank you for having me, guys.
No problem. Thank you.